welcome to St Helens. It's a nice pastely kind of morning, just a little bit of pink in the sky. Not too dramatic. The sunrise I don't think is going to be today. There is a bit of a bank of cloud off to the east. There's St Helens Fort. But the reason I'm here this morning is to tell you a little bit about that building there, which is the remains of St Helens Church. And it's got a lot of history to it, and I think the title for this video will be How St Helens Got Its Name, and I'd like to tell you a little bit of that story, which is very much associated with that church tower that is standing there all by itself at the moment. I'm also going to go round to Priory Bay. The name Priory Bay also is the name will become clear why it's called that by the end of the video. And at the end of the video I'd like you to read a poem that I wrote yesterday, where I tried to kind of, I suppose, capture in poetry form, if you can call it that, what I'd find out when I did a little bit of reading about this place. So I hope you'll stick around to hear the poem at the end. But first off, let's take a few pictures this morning. Pictures of the sunrise, pictures of the tower there that remains of St Helens Church, a few pictures of the beach, maybe a bit of wildlife. Okay, so let's go. The story that I'm going to tell anyway goes back to 246, 47 or 48 AD, and that's when Helena, a girl called Helena, was born. Exactly where she was born and who she was born to, as I understand it, or as I gleaned, is not exactly known. I think most people think that she was Greek. However, there is a line of thought, I suppose, put forward by a couple of people many, many years later, that she might have been born right here in Britain, and was the daughter, maybe, of a king of Colchester in Roman Britain. And that old king of Colchester might have been the king that gave his name to the nursery rhyme, Old King Cole was a merry old soul, and a merry old soul was he. So I find that interesting. I don't think it's very widely held that was the case, but you know, there is a line of thought that might be. Anyway, so Helena eventually, you know, when she sort of a bit older, grew up and became the mother of the Emperor Constantine. And so when she was converted, after Constantine was converted to Christianity, she went to Jerusalem, where she is said to have come across the remains of the real cross of Christ, in true sort of Blackadder fashion, and so became a saint, hence St Helena. And so that was quite interesting. Of course, Constantine became a Christian famously when he had a vision of a cross in the sky, also said to be witnessed by the troops or the soldiers he was leading. So that had a dramatic effect on the world. Obviously the Roman Empire then, under his kind of orders, effectively, became Christian, and of course that had a big influence on the world as we know it. So let's wind the clock forward to the invasion by the Normans of Britain in 1066, and following that invasion, and some Benedictine monks came across and ended up on the Isle of Wight here. We're given a piece of land, and there was an old sort of, I don't know, 7th century church here. They remodeled it into with stone and into like a Norman style church, and and gave it the name St Helena, St Helena's Priory, and of course that later became St Helens Priory and St Helens Church. And so after the Norman conquest, the monks built the church, and that went on very happily, really, with the tower being added in the reign of Henry III in the 1200s, in the 13th century, and that's the tower that remains today that you can see. So that's been there since the 1200s. In 1414, the monastery was kind of disbanded. I think it came into financial difficulties, and anyway, it kind of disbanded, and then I think it fell into disrepair. There was a number of different owners of the land, including Eton at one point. They also kind of ran that famous college and famous school that's still around. So I found that quite interesting. And anyway, in the 1700s, just before actually Ashley Down was constructed as a sea marker, this was painted white, and the remaining tower here was changed into a sea marker. At various times, the stones from this whole area, from the Priory and the defences around the Priory, have been used for, in various. Some were sold. Some actually were famously used for scrubbing the decks of ships. Kind of gripped by a sense of history after thinking about the church, and then going back in time to Helena and how she gave a name to that church and the Roman Empire. And in fact, I was reading this morning that flint tools have been found on Priory Bay and coming round into St Helens. This area here, flint tools have been found that date back to the early Stone Age. So I suppose the fleeting nature of one's life becomes all too apparent when you start putting history in context, and you look at these old buildings and think about how this land has been used over time. I'm not sure what this is, but it's quite a long way out. Maybe the remnants of some groin or something, maybe when the shore was closer than it is now, because of course there has been some erosion, and you see the cliffs there falling away, but it does provide quite a nice bit of foreground interest, as it were, to some shots going either way. So you can see Seagrove Bay and then Priory Bay here, coming round to Nodes Point. Then there's St Helens Church. There's the sea wall at St Helens, and going round to Bembridge and the lifeboat station. So as I said, quite a long way out here. The tide is now coming in, so I don't really want to get too wet by staying out here too long, but I'll take a few pictures. So I better beat a retreat now before I get cut off here. But I'll just trying some shots with this post in the foreground, either the post being blurry or the background being blurry. So whether those have come out, I don't know, but look, you can see I'm beginning to get cut off. So before I get absolutely soaking, I guess I'm just gonna brave it and see if my shoes protect my feet enough. Right, here we go. All right, let's beat a retreat. Oh dear, dear. I left it a bit too long. Oh well, it's given my shoes a bit of a clean, however salty they will turn out to be. Oh, my feet are wet now. Whatever protection these shoes offer have not been enough to resist that water. Okay, so this is my attempt at summarising some of the history that I've talked about already this morning. So I'm going to give it a whirl. This is a poem called How St Helens Got Its Name, and it's by myself, Richard Lashley. Okay. So much time has gone by since those 3rd century days, when the Romans were in Britain building walls and highways, when merry old King Cole, Geoffrey's legend does state, fathered a daughter who would go on to change the world's fate. Helena would give birth to the Emperor Constantine, who saw a vision in the sky and supposed it divine. Religion was now the one of the cross. In the centuries that followed, Christianity was boss. Helena was canonized into a saint. Her name would be thought of as one without taint. Benedictine monks found a priory to fix after arriving in Britain in 1066. They dedicated it to the said St Helena on the Isle of Wight off the south coast of England. A tower arose in the reign of Henry III, but in 1414 cries could be heard. The monks had to leave, they could no longer pay, so after this date the church started to decay. Sailors used her stones to holy stone their decks. Some were used for building, some to write checks. Eventually only the tower remained. It was painted white to help eyesights that strained. To see a marker on the land, also sometimes a flame, that helped guide boats home safely, the danger to tame. And to this day it fulfills the very same role and forms a bridge to the past when the building was whole. There you are, St Helens Church, lots of history. Thank you for joining me this morning.